So if you remember the last, and let me just give a quick summary of the last thing that we learned. We learned that there was, from Musaf, they broke down Parshas Ha'azinu into 6 different sections. And each section was something that they said one Shabbos when they brought the Karban Musaf. So to complete the cycle, it took 6 weeks. What they said Shabbos afternoon at the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Ha'arbayim Shabbos afternoon was the first part of Shiras Hayam Az Yashir, the first 10 psukim. Then they said the second 10 psukim. And then they said another section of Chumash, which was also Az Yashir, that dealt with the Be'er Shel Miriam. Okay? So what do we have? We have 3 sections. So the Gemara said, did they say all 6 and all 3 every Shabbos? The Gemara said no. That we have a brisa that tells us the time it took them to say all 6, they said the 3 2 times, which means every Shabbos they said one of the sections of Ha'azinu, one of the sections of Oz. They said the first section of Oz Yashir. The next Shabbos they said the second section of Ha'azinu and the second section of Oz Yashir. The third Shabbos they said the third section of Ha'azinu and the last piece of Oz Yashir. The fourth they said the fourth section of Ha'azinu, and they went back to say the first of Oz Yashir and the fifth, second, sixth, third. So because we don't have karbanos, they were only applicable to karbanos. Even though we do say the shir shel yom in the morning, which is a vestige of that we do zecher lemikdash, but we minimize it. We don't do it. It's hard enough to get people. Well, we say that as part of davening. Remember, this is what the Levium sang. So it's interesting. Think about it. They sang 10 psukim, and that's how long it took them to shech the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Ha'arbayim. So even if we say it took them time to shech and to do all the avodos, they must have really dragged out those 10 psukim, right? It really, but remember, right? There was music and there, instrumental accompaniment. Chazanis was right there. There was a whole thing, right? A whole thing. Correct. I mean, Hallel can take half an hour. So whatever they obviously did it with a lot of melody. And then the Gemara said, remember, how did we get it? How did we start this whole discussion? We started this whole discussion because there was an incident where the Levium messed up. Either they sang the wrong shir, or they didn't sing a shir. They didn't sing any shir. So the Gemara now comes along, and the Gemara says that, discussing this, who was the one who the Gemara began by discussing Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai and his changes, his gezeros. So one of his gezeros was that after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, they went back to accepting edus for the entire day. Right. While there was a Beis HaMikdash, they only accepted edus until the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Ha'arbayim. But after the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, they accepted edus the entire day. That's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Gemara now goes on to talk about the exile, the gradual diminishing of Kedusha in the days of the Bayis Rishon, and the gradual diminishing of Kedusha in the days of the Bayis Sheni. And they're represented by 2 different things. The gradual diminishing of Kedusha in the Bayis Rishon was illustrated by the movement of the the Shechina. The gradual diminishing.
Oh, the Shechina.
They moved. Right. Remember we learned
7 levels.
Right.
It moved
10 journeys.
to the crew.
Went from
the
the
other
Aron to one crew.
to the other
Right.
crew.
Some say it went to,
Both.
maybe it went to the other crew. Maybe then it went to the threshold. And from the threshold, it went to the courtyard. From the courtyard, it went to the Mizbeach. From the Mizbeach, it went to the wall. From the wall, it went to the city. From the city, it went to the midbar, to the desert, and then ultimately ascended to its place, so to speak. That this was HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulling away his presence from Bnei Israel during the time. In other words, the Bayis hadn't been destroyed yet. Right, the bias had not been destroyed, and yet what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? HaKadosh Baruch Hu pulled his Shechina away because we were
Was there any
heading
way of knowing that?
we were heading towards destruction.
I mean, the
Yeah,
people-
because what happened is Nevuah prophecy stopped.
Wait,
Prophecy stopped in the days.
I mean, no, where did the Shechina move? When the Shechina moved from the Aron to the Kruv, it stopped?
What point of time
What
was
stopped?
there, would
The Nevi'im.
the dissipation of the Shekhinah
Right.
stop? What historical time did it?
I mean, if we were living now, would we know that the Shekhinah moved from you know? the-
No, probably not. How did they know in
How
the,
did, I mean,
right, how did they
it's
know
easy to
in
sit
those
here and
days?
Say now,
no? So the Gemara bases it on psukim,
right, I know.
right? In other
But
words,
that-
we learned, we went through the psukim
Yes.
last week.
Uh-huh.
The Gemara bases it on psukim and looks at all of these psukim. Now, the psukim don't say clearly, oh, the Shechina move, first move was from here to here.
Right.
Second move was from here to here. No, the psukim don't say that. The psukim just refer to the Shechina in different places. And the fact that the psukim refer to the Shechina in different places means that the Shechina traveled in, was in those different places. Those different places, if you take a bird's eye view of them, mean going from the most intimate, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu, which was on the paroches, on the kapores, the cover of the Aron Kodesh. From there, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Bein HaKruvim, between those original two kruvim that were part of the cover, that's where HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's where Moshe heard the voice of HaKadosh Baruch Hu emanate from. And then we have these psukim that say that the Shekhinah was in these other places. So our Mesorah is that the Shekhinah was in these other places because the Shekhinah was leaving. Now, all of these psukim are not actually even in chronological order, right? But they paint this picture of a prophecy of the Shekhinah leaving, meaning that the Shekhinah didn't leave all at once. It wasn't like the Shekhinah just said, okay, I'm out of here. The Shekhinah pulled itself
Withdrew
away slowly, right? A little bit at a time. And obviously, Kadosh Baruch Hu didn't want to do that, but we left him no choice, so to speak.
Did it vacillate up and down?
No, it seems it did not. In other words,
But
It-
never came back.
never came, right, it didn't
Like
come.
it-
By
it took-
Shani was never there.
It wasn't there in the
Yeah,
Bayesheni.
but-
So
Right? It
what's
didn't
a
come.
bias without the Shekhinah?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole point of having the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash, that's where the Shekhinah rested. It's like Hashem contracted himself to fit in
Right.
there.
Now,
So-
in the first Beis HaMikdash.
No, but except what's this? I mean,
We didn't have an Aron Kodesh in the second.
so
There was
then
no Aron
also-
Kodesh in the second
Right, so
Beis
when we
HaMikdash.
say, he does this,
There was a paroches. There was a
What did he
Kodesh
sprinkle?
HaKadoshim.
Why?
There
What
were
was in it?
karbanos.
Who was in the Kodesh?
I know, but what was in the Kodesh
Yeah,
Kodesh?
There-
Yeah, I know, but the Kodesh Baruch Hu wasn't there.
No, he wasn't.
It was a voda without the Shekhinah. The
Correct.
voda-
That's correct. What do we have now?
We don't have a voda.
No, we
No,
say
but
that.
we say that our
Karbanos.
tefillah is in place
It's a
of the
substitute.
karbanos. Our tefillah is in place of the karbanos, but we don't have the Shekhinah. We don't feel the Shekhinah. We don't.
Well, unless it's everywhere.
Look,
No,
Okay.
I understand
No.
that it's everywhere. I don't
right?
mean it.
You know the song, right? Hashem is there. Right? Hashem is here. Hashem is there. Hashem is surely
One of my
everywhere. All right,
favorites.
right. So clearly, I mean, Ron is hinting to the fundamental question: if Hashem is everywhere,
No, I
So
understand.
what does it
He picked
mean?
like a fundamental spot where this was like, the essence. But so he left. So
well, no, he didn't leave.
Right.
This clear revelation
Yeah,
of
okay.
him in the world left.
but we didn't know he was leaving. In other words, if you imagine it as a cloud, and I know that's terrible, it's not a cloud, but there was a cloud sitting there right over the Kapolis, right? Now all of a sudden the cloud moved. Now the cloud is in the court. Then you'd say, "Oh, I can see."
That's correct, right?
But if you're not aware
Now,
of it,
but why couldn't it have been that? Why could it not have been that?
Because it didn't happen.
Why?
Well, it's
So we learn in this week's parsha about the Makos, right? And we learn that after Makkah number 5, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was the one who started hardening Paro's heart.
Right.
Why?
To make it
He
harder
wanted
for
to
him to do
punish
tshuva.
Not to make it harder for him to do tshuva. Yes, because he wanted to punish him.
and he
But
wanted
to balance, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to maintain the Bechira Chavshis of Paro, free choice. Right? Now, if you're getting slugged with all of these makos,
It's easy to just.
right? Where's your free choice? Like, who's gonna, so
So you
HaKadosh Baruch
suddenly have free choice. You're getting slugged, and you're not being allowed to decide for
No,
yourself.
in
No,
other words,
no.
what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was doing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in other words, every
It's an
time a
upgrade.
makkah came, every
Right.
time, right? So the scale weighed heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, right? So you would think that the scale was like this for letting Bnei Yisrael go. That's not free will. Free will is when the scale is like this. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to do?
Balance it out.
HaKadosh Baruch Hu hardened his heart and put it back like this, right? So if we had a cloud that was, the cloud was on top of the kapores.
Right.
And then the next, a couple of days later or a couple of years later, the cloud was on the kapores. On the crew. And then the crowd was out on the mizbeh.
Right.
So what would people say?
He's leaving.
People say he's leaving. Right? Right? So it would be, right? It would be that we could, at that point, we could do tshuva. But then HaKadosh Baruch Hu would say, we didn't do tshuva of our own free will. Why did we do tshuva? We did tshuva because we saw it.
Because we realized the consequences were actually happening.
Right? That's correct. In other words, it wasn't because
That's not free will.
no, but it's not doing tshuva.
You think that's
It's not
enough?
tshuva
It's
lishma.
it's
That's
not
not
doing
enough.
tshuva lishma. What?
But that's not enough.
What's not enough?
Vav Sivan to a few weeks later. I mean, here the whole door saw Hashem. I mean, the whole generation saw Hashem. No one was alive at the time. And yet the Chet Egel happened within a matter of weeks. So here, there's no
Yeah.
There's
Well,
no
Hashem takes us out
more
of Mitzrayim,
amazing
splits the
revelation
sea.
than seeing Hashem, hearing Hashem, doing everything.
I think, this is what I learned, that after Purim and after Israel did Tshuva without miracles, without all miracles, it was an upgrade. And basically, Hashem gave Israel the Bayit Sheni, but without the Shekhinah, because now that there's a higher level of free will, the second temple. And we had to decide things on our own. We didn't have Urim between make decisions.
That's correct.
So everything was, the free will was a higher level, and that's what Hashem did after Purim.
Correct. I think that's correct.
Does
Right,
that answer the question?
No, but I think I'm
Yeah.
not sure exactly what Hal was asking.
Yeah.
Right. Hal was saying, how could we go from
Well, Hal is saying, we went from
Hal, ask your question
We went
again.
from Yesias Mitzrayim to the Egel.
I
in
think
6
like
weeks.
Shekhinah
What was your
an
question,
upgrade.
Al?
It was an upgrade.
No, you're saying that if we had seen the Shekhinah moving from point A to point B to point C,
That would have been enough to change.
that
our
would have been
behavior.
enough to change our behavior. What I'm asking is, here
So Yesias Mitzrayim, right?
you
That
saw
didn't
Yetzias
change our
Mitzrayim, you saw
behavior.
Yam Suf, you saw. Forget that you heard
I'm saying,
Hashem.
you saw all those miracles.
But tell me why that's not a question.
We didn't
Answer your own question. Why is it not a question? Because at that point we were newly out of Mitzrayim, right? All of the baggage that we brought with us from Mitzrayim, we're still schlepping with us. It's 49 days. Yes, Ein Achinami, it's 49 days, and we saw the miraculous. We heard HaKadosh Baruch Hu's voice, but a mere 40 days later, we're over that. We're still slaves. We're still out of Mitzrayim. Here, we're talking about people who have experienced for hundreds of years the Beis HaMikdash,
Mhm.
right? For hundreds of years, the Beis HaMikdash has been around. First Beis HaMikdash was around for hundreds of years,
Right.
right? People experienced the miracles of that Beis HaMikdash generation after generation after generation, right? They saw all these miracles. Now, if they had, I'm just throwing out a possible answer. If they had seen the Shekhinah start to disappear,
Right.
so they might have done tshuva, but the tshuva would have been, what was your phrase?
Shalol.
Shalol lishma.
Right.
It would have been shalol lishma. In other words, why would they have done tshuva? They would have done tshuva because they had a gun to their head. What was the gun to their head? The gun to their head was the Shekhinah moving away.
But they had all these Nevi'im telling
Yeah,
them
well,
that
didn't
the
they have
Shekhinah's leaving,
prophets?
right? I mean,
It's
so
not the same.
I agree. It's not as you could doubt a Navi. You could say,
We would teachers yell at us all
oh,
the
so
time.
did I, and I was
Okay.
in the principal's office always. So
And that's precisely the point. In other words, yes, it's true. The Nevi'im told us X, Y, or Z. And what did we do? We ignored them. Right? The Nevi'im told us X, Y, or Z, and we ignored them. Right? Because it would be tshuva, but it wouldn't be tshuva lishma. It would, in other words, it's like this. it's like if you take out the garbage because you know if you don't take out the garbage, your wife is going to make you miserable. Okay, you still took out the
Not in my
garbage.
house, not in my house.
I'm not saying this applies to anybody here in this room,
Applies to me.
right? You took out you still took out the garbage,
Right.
but
You don't get any credit for that?
no, you get
Can I
credit.
leave it in the house?
No, you get credit for taking out the garbage, but it's not. You don't get as high a mark,
Because you didn't
Right.
think of doing it on your.
right? You didn't get as high as mark if you did it because you said, "No, I know this bothers her. If I don't do it, nothing's going to happen." But you know, she's not going to be, she's not going to yell, and nothing's going to happen. But you know what? I'll take it out because I know it bothers her if it's here. In both cases, you've taken out the garbage. But when you take out the garbage on the first level, it's down here. When you take out the garbage on the second level, it's up here. Right now, ein achinami, you're right. Tshuva is tshuva, right? Taking out the garbage is taking out the garbage. Tshuva is tshuva. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to do tshuva lishma, for the right reason, not to do tshuva because we watched him leaving, right? But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted us to do tshuva because we realized that what we were doing was wrong because it wasn't what he wanted from us. In other words,
One of
that's...
the ways to realize that is he's leaving.
But HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want us to realize that because he's leaving. Again,
No, I understand.
it's hard for me. Look, I mean, HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't share this with me. I don't know. I'm just bringing my experience to say, that this. So back to Ron's question. So if we didn't have a cloud that moved from the kapores to the kruv to the
Doorway,
right.
courtyard,
So how did we know that it happened? We know that it happened because of all these statements, all these psukim that we learned last week, right? That were Nevi'im telling us that here's where the Shekhinah is. The Shekhinah is on the
They're not
Mizbeach.
even in chronological order.
Correct. The Shekhinah is on the Mizbeach. What do you mean the Shekhinah is on the Mizbeach? The Shekhinah is on the Kaporis. No. The Shekhinah is on the Kruv. What do you mean the Shekhinah is on the Kruv? The Shekhinah is on the Mizbeach. It was on the Kapor. Right? Oh. So how do
we got a higher dose?
So how do right? So how do we put it together? We put it together by saying all of these Nevi'im, they're giving us a Nevuah that they see in the Nevuah that the Shekhinah is moving. Now, we didn't see it. There was no news, Channel 7, Eyewitness News, the Shekhinah is Shekhinah watch, right? The Shekhinah is moving, right? We have a breaking news. The Shekhinah has moved from the Kruv to the, right? That wasn't it. But the Nevi'im were telling us, and even hearing it, we were not. Okay, so that was what we learned. That was in the first base of Mikdash. That was the Shekhinah. In the second base of Mikdash, there was no manifestation of the Shekhinah. Right? So in the second base of Mikdash, the way that the decline was measured was by the exile of the Sanhedrin. Meaning, the Sanhedrin initially functioned, it functioned in the first base of Mikdash and it functioned in the second base of Mikdash. And in both Batei Mikdash, the Sanhedrin was supposed to function in a place called the Lishchas HaGazis, the chamber of hewn stone. And it was interesting. It was an interesting place. It was like partly partly in a holy place, partly not in a holy place. That's where they functioned. As long as they were there, they could paskin cases of capital punishment. And not only could they paskin cases of capital punishment, but anywhere throughout the land of Israel where there was a Bezdin of 23, they could paskin cases of capital punishment. So you all know what happened. The murder rate climbed, and the Sanhedrin said, we can't possibly, deal with all these cases of murder. We can't deal with them, and the local Batei Din can't deal with them. So in order to avoid dealing with them, what did they do? They moved from the Lishchas HaGazis to another place. That other place was a place called Chanos. So either Chanos is the name of a place, or it means store. Chanut in Hebrew means store. They moved to like the stores. Right? They moved to the. In other words, they moved away from the Lishchas HaGazis, and then they moved again. They were just like there were 10 stages to the Shekhinah's departure in the Bayis Rishon. There were 10 stages to the Sanhedrin's galus in the Bayis Sheni. Now, not all of those stages occurred while the Bayis Sheni existed. Right? We know that, for instance, when one of those stages was from Yerushalayim to Yavne, that occurred at the time of the destruction. And the Sanhedrin continued to move around even after the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. They were in Yavne. They went from Yavne to Usha. They went from Usha back to Yavne. They went from Yavne to Usha. They went from Usha to another place. And the commentary explains that why did they go to all these places? So sometimes they went to these places for political reasons, meaning that the persecutions in a particular place, that they moved from Yavne to Usha, was safer in Usha, right? And then they moved back. They also moved based on where the Nasi lived, right? They were in the hometown of the Nasi. So all of these places talk about, who was the Nasi who lived here, a whole history, literally a whole history of the Sanhedrin, right? When did the Sanhedrin stop functioning as a Sanhedrin? In the 400s. In the 400s, right? The Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the year 70. The Sanhedrin continued to function for another 300 and change years, okay? For traveling back and forth to all these different places. And they continued to accept testimony about the new moon. This is how we know that they were in these different places, because we have records, right? We learned that they accepted testimony in these different places until finally the Sanhedrin stopped functioning. It became illegal, it was prohibited by the Romans to use the term Nasi anymore. So that's when the introduction of the calendar by Hillel number 2, I think it was. Right, Hillel second, right? That was the introduction of the calendar, because with the cessation of the Sanhedrin functioning, we no longer had any way to be Mekadesh the Chodesh. And as a result of that, we needed a calendar. Right? The idea is that when the Sanhedrin will one day, please God, be reestablished, we'll go back to Kiddush HaChodesh.
One day Yontif.
One day Yontif you can have now.
Okay.
We can?
I'm working on it, yes.
Let's go to Israel.
I didn't hear that.
He
I
was
heard I
looking
can
for
have
the-
one day
he was
off.
looking for one day
I
off
heard
and
I
then
can have
great
one day.
Okay. So this was sort of all that we've been doing leading up to today. Okay. Let's go.
We didn't even start.
Let's go.
The rabbi said
uh,
was the
one day
running-
Israel, one day
That was the
Yontif.
running start.
That was it. That was the head start, right?
Okay, let's go. Let's. So we don't have to go back over all of this. Let's go.
That's it.
Okay, let's go to 31b. You know what? Let's go to the Mishnah. We're going to start from the Mishnah. 31b1. 31b1.
Wow, we're flying.
See, I told you, don't get it. Right? 31b1. I can smell the food for the siyum already. I'm a Rebbe Yoshua ben Karcha. Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha said as follows: 31b1, Lamed Aleph Amid Beis, the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, V'od Zos Hiskin Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. Remember, we've been talking about the takanos of Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, and also this, or additionally, this was established by Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai. What was the establishment? What was the takana? She'afilu Rosh Bezdin b'chol makom, that even if the Rosh Bezdin is not with the Sanhedrin, in other words, the Rosh Bezdin is away from the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin in Yerushalayim. The Rosh Bezdin is somewhere else. Shelo yeho ha'edim holchim ela lamakom abad. Where do the Edim have to go? Only to the Sanhedrin. In other words, maybe we would think that the Edim have to go to where the Av Bezdin is. Right? Why? Because he was the one who declared Rosh Chodesh. Right? He was the one who declared Rosh Chodesh. Hey, Norman, right?
The town in Jerusalem today, it's Sanhedria. Was this town? Was that where they were based out of? You know what I'm talking about? There's a
Sanhedria Morchevet.
Okay, so is that where they were based?
I don't think so.
So what was that? Was that just the burying ground?
It is a burial ground, but if it was a burial ground for members, it was
There you go.
so look and see.
I thought maybe that's where they met.
Okay, So
Well, the Sanhedrin was next to the base of,
the Sanhedrin was in the base of English.
well, in the,
In and
Well, I
out,
was talking about the
partially
town.
in and partially
After they
out.
left,
no,
they
no, right.
had the town.
You're
so-
saying that was the place. I don't.
They had to have, they had to have 70 with the Sanhedrin, right? Or at least
Right,
three
right.
to
But I had
declare.
to move someplace, so.
No, so why would you think you'd go to where the one person is?
No, in other words, we're talking here about Kiddush HaChodesh, right?
Right.
Right, we're talking about Kiddush HaChodesh. In Kiddush HaChodesh, you need seemingly, you need the Rosh Beis Din.
Right.
After the testimony of the Eidim would be accepted, the Rosh Beis Din would say Mekudash,
Right.
and everybody would respond Mekudash, Mekudash.
Mhm.
Okay, all the other members of the Sanhedrin would respond Mekudash, Mekudash. It's interesting. Sometimes you hear this at a chuppah, right? You'll hear, the chassan will put the ring on the kala's finger, and he'll say Harayat Mekudesh Eslibit, right? Blah blah blah. And the Eidim will sometimes say Mekudash, Mekudash. Where does that source Mekudash, Mekudash come from? Comes from Kiddush HaChodesh. Basically, they're calling her a moon, right? They're saying you look like the new moon, right? Remember, you couldn't see the new moon, so maybe it's a compliment. I'm not sure, right? But the idea is, so the process of declaring the new month was that the Av Beis Din would say Mekudash, and the members of the
First, the Sanhedrin
Sanhedrin,
would take testimony.
right? First, they would take testimony. Then the Av Beis
Did they
Din,
vote on it?
once the testimony was clarified, they discussed it, right? And they were, I don't know if they had a vote on it or not. I'm not sure. I don't know.
The majority, I mean,
I think it was either accepted or not accepted, right?
we have a machlokas on everything. always.
It's an interesting question. I don't know if they voted on the Eidos. I think either they all accepted the Eidos or they didn't accept the Eidos. I'm not sure. It's a good question. But once they got to the point where it was acceptable, so then the Rosh, the Av Beis Din would say Mekudash, and the members of the Sanhedrin would say Mekudash, Mekudash. So I would think, based on this, that if the Sanhedrin's in Yerushalayim, let's say, and the Av Beis Din's in Sfat, we all got to get on a bus and go
Or
up to
he's got to
Sfat.
come to us.
Or he's got to come to us. Or he's got to come to us. So what?
We gotta have
So
an acting Rosh.
there must have been a hierarchy of sorts there.
Right. Like an
If the
assistant Rosh.
if the Beis Din is.
What if he was
ill
sick or something like
There
that?
has to be a,
All right, so
vice of Beis
so
Din.
that's precisely what we're gonna.
Right.
And that's
Yeah,
precisely
vice-
what we're going to see. In other words, we're going to see that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai established this takana, which is you don't have to go where the Av Beis Din is. You come to the Sanhedrin. So what's going to happen? You come to the Sanhedrin, you give your edus. If we accept your right, so if you're coming to the Sanhedrin and we see the aid, as we listening, we're hearing that the edus is good. We're going to send for the Av Beis Din. Let's say he's close by.
Right.
We'll send for the Av Beis Din. He'll come. He'll declare Mekudash. We'll all say Mekudash, Mekudash, and Shalom Al Yisrael. But if the Av Beis Din can't get there, let's say he's sick, let's say he can't get there, let's say he's in Sfat or he's in who knows where, right? So he came to Great Neck to raise money, whatever it is. So somebody else is gonna say Mekudash in this hierarchy, and we're all gonna say Mekudash, Mekudash. That was a takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, that this can occur without the
Well,
Av
it
Beis Din.
changed.
Right?
It implies that before Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along, you had to have the Av Beis Din.
Correct. That's correct. And we're going to see that now in the Gemara. We're going to see a similar kind of thing in the Gemara. Okay. Now, the Gemara is going to give us the source or a little bit of this story based on this Mishnah. Hahi Isasa, there was a particular woman. We don't know who she was. Doesn't matter who she was, but there was a particular woman, the Azmenuha Ladina, who was summoned to a din Torah. Kame de Amemar bin Nahardai. She was summoned before Amemar, who was in the city of Nahardai. Where was Nahardai? It was a Babylonian city. It's a Babylonian city, right? Right. So he was in the city of Nahardai. And what happened? Azal, in other words, she got the subpoena. The subpoena said, come to before Amemar in Nahardai. And what happened? Azil Amemar lemechuza. Memar left Nahardai and went to Mechuza. Gemara doesn't tell us why, but he left Nahardai and went to Mechuza. Below Azla Basre. And what happened? She didn't follow him. Right? She didn't go after him. Kosa psicha iluha. He wrote a contempt of court order against her, right? Because he expected her
Follow him around.
to follow him around wherever he goes. He's the presiding judge, right? So he's the presiding judge. You got to go where the presiding judge goes. By the way, which is not, from what I'm led to believe, not such a foreign concept in our civil court system. Is that correct? Like,
I don't know. I mean, I know it is. I mean, you go to court in Queens, they don't then tell you, you got to follow the judge to Albany.
right? But okay.
I don't know. I mean, you
Okay.
get someone, to one place.
Okay, so he wrote this shtar sirup. He wrote this. He held her in contempt of court. Amar le Rav Ashi la Meimar. So Rav Ashi says to him, "Wait a second, what'd you do that for?" V'ha'anon tanan. We learned afilu Rosh Bezdin b'chol makom shelo yuhu ha'edim holchim ela lamakom abad. Right? What about this Mishnah?
Right.
Rav Ashi says to Ameimar. What does our Mishnah say? Our Mishnah says that even if the Rosh Bezdin is somewhere else, you only go to the place where the Bezdin is sitting. Ameimar, he went to Mechuzah, but Ameimar's Bezdin was still sitting in Nahardai. She went to Nahardai. Seemingly, she did the right thing. And he held her in contempt of court. So Rav Ashi says, what'd you do that for? That's not in accordance with the Mishnah. So what did he answer? Amar le. So Ameimar answered Rav Ashi and he said, Hani mili le'inyun edus hachodesh. This is what the Mishnah is talking about, is only when it comes to testimony concerning the new moon. And why is it only concerning testimony about the new moon? The im came, because if we would require the witnesses to chase after the Av Bezdin, not only would you miss the new moon, but if I was a witness, I came one year as a witness, right? I came to Yerushalayim, right? And now I was told, no, you have to go to Tzfat, right?
By the time I got there, he already moved.
Correct. So I wouldn't go anymore. Nimtses machshilon la'osi lavo, right? He says, so Ameimar says, yeah, you're right, that we do have such a Mishnah, and we do have such a halacha, and the halacha was in place for the Eidim who come to give testimony about Rosh Chodesh. And this particular halacha was in place, was instituted by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai in order to make it more convenient for the Eidim so that they would continue to come in the future.
There's also a distinction between an Adam and a litigant.
Oh, good. We're going to come to that in just a
I don't know why
second.
she was coming, but she wasn't.
Right? Aval hacha, but here, listen to this is a great expression. Aval hacha, but in my case, says Ameimar, Eved love leish malve. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Borrower is a slave to the lender. What does that mean? It means that we don't care about the borrower in this case. In other words, the lender is making a claim that the borrower didn't pay him back.
You have to answer.
Right? And the borrower, the burden of proof, if you will, I really shouldn't say burden of proof because that's a halachic concept that's not accurate. But the determining factor for where the case is adjudicated is where the lender wants the case to be adjudicated. Not where the borrower has to go. It's where the lender wants the case to be adjudicated. That's what Ameimar said.
Or where the star is located.
Where the star,
If it gets lost and it gets found.
where the star was. Correct. Okay. So you hear the difference.
Yeah.
So this takana that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai instituted was limited in scope. It only applied to the Eidim who were coming for Kiddush HaChodesh. It didn't apply in general. In general, halacha followed the protocol that the borrower is, there's got to be a legal term for this, but the borrower is subservient, if you will, or secondary to the lender.
Well, the lender chooses the venue.
Yeah.
The lender
The
chooses the
forum
venue,
shop.
and he is, and the borrower is obligated
You have
to
to go where the lender
go
summons.
whatever that venue is. The borrower is obligated to go there.
Except Rome.
Okay. So Tana Rabbanan, rabbis now tell us another thing. Said the rabbis, and this is from Michael. Ein kohanim rasha'im la'alos b'sandalehem laduchen.
Well, you can't wear sandals.
Right? Yes, for Rob also, right? Right? Why do you guys take off your shoes before you go up to duchen?
So they'll wear decent socks.
No, that was,
Oh,
I mean,
It's just, I was
supposedly,
it's not a pureness.
no, Mikdash, like when Moshe went up to speak to Hashem.
You know, Moshe was on the snare. Kadosh Baruch Hu told him, take off your shoes,
shoes.
right?
Right.
Because the ground you're
You're
standing
standing on
upon
is
is holy ground,
Admat Kodesh.
right? The bima is no more Admat Kodesh than any other place.
Right.
So why do you take off your shoes? Interesting question, right? Interesting question, right? Why did they take off their
Better
shoes?
check their credentials. If they-
All right. So listen.
Pass that down.
So
No, but
no.
I
So
know
listen.
in
Part
Israel,
of
they
the
take off their
handshakes.
sandals, they don't even have socks on.
Yeah,
They
how
go
do you
barefoot.
not know?
No, why? I mean,
I always thought it was a leather issue because they also wash your hands at the same time. So you're getting rid of anything that, you know. I've never
That's
seen that.
interesting. That's interesting. And the Gemara doesn't give either of those reasons. The Gemara gives it, but listen to the reason the Gemara gives. It's a great, you know, it enlightens us to something that, you know, we don't really think about. And what is that? Right, vizu, right? So, vizu echad mitisha takanos shehiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is one of the 9 takanos that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai established. Now, so why did Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai establish this particular takana? Because if you're wearing shoes or you're wearing sandals and a strap becomes undone, or remember the sandals that they used to wear in those days, they wound up your foot, right up your calf, all right? And shoes, certainly, let's say that it would become undone. So what might you do?
you would think to retire.
You might sit down to tie it, right? What's wrong with that if you sit down to tie it? People are going to think that you're excusing yourself from duchening. Why? Because there's a problem with your yichus. In other words, if you were to sit down in the middle of duchen, right? You can't duchen sitting down. You can only duchen standing up. Right? You can only birchas kohanim has to be done standing up. So if you're sitting, you know why you're sitting. You're sitting because your shoelace became untied. But somebody who's looking at you sees you sitting up there, and what are they going to say?
That you can't do.
They're going to say, "Oh, listen,
What's wrong with you?
you know, cats can't duchen,
Right.
right?
You say you can't do it. on a
Horses will be looking at you.
No, can't duchen.
That's also
Right?
what he
Cats,
calls-
right? Cats can't. It sounds like a law firm, right? Cats and cats can't
Why not
duchen.
just say you
right?
can't tie your
There's-
shoes till after you're done dumping?
There's a problem, but that's not.
Yeah, but
That's not human
That
nature.
doesn't answer.
Right? Human nature is that. So the rabbis eliminated the problem. How they eliminate the problem? Don't wear your shoes. So they eliminated the. It was a takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, right? That's why you guys don't wear
I
shoes.
thought it was because, you clean your feet.
Right.
Yeah, into, I know the carpeting by the Aron is not anything holy, but conceptually.
Not even close.
No,
But actually,
No, it is
holy.
holy, actually.
Well, it has holes, right? But conceptually, the idea was that, you know, like, for instance, I know in Breuer's, when I was a kid, they wore white socks. They had special white socks that you put on. So it was this idea of purity before you do them. And that shoes were considered.
That's
I
an
hate to
embellishment.
burst the bubble,
Well, it's their minhag, it's not mine.
but it seems that this is a takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. And the reason was to ensure that you guys don't accidentally sit down, which will cause us to think that there's a problem with the firm of cats and cats,
Okay.
right? So
We
that's
wouldn't
the
want
reason.
that to happen.
So interesting,
They have
No,
that
they didn't
also-
wash their feet, they just washed their hands.
correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
You have that when you somebody, if
somebody
you
wash your
call
feet
up
once?
a Cohen,
No.
when you're supposed to call up a lady
No.
or something.
Go
You
to
don't like
Marshall.
substitute
Go
or
to
call
Marshall,
up
get
over
the feet.
there for
Right.
the same reason, because otherwise someone would think there was something wrong with them.
Right.
If you call up a Kohen,
You don't have a lady, the Cohen.
no, you call up a Kohen.
Right.
Let's say we call up Bob Katz, and he's in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and he can't come, but Michael Katz is there. do we now call it Michael Katz? And the answer is Michael Katz can come up and take the Aliyah, but we don't call him by name. The reason we don't call him by name is because if we call Rob by name, then we call Michael by name, people are going to say there's a problem with Rob's yichus. Right? So Michael comes up to take the Aliyah,
We
but
don't know who's who.
we don't call him up. We don't call him up.
That happened to me a couple months ago.
Really?
Because I was called lady to become Kohen. They called me up for the first parsha. That second, after they called me up, the Kohen walked in. So I knew the halacha. I stepped back and I gave it to him.
But they didn't call him up.
They did not call him up.
Right, correct.
They didn't call him up. And then I don't think they called. Then they didn't call me up second time. I just the bracha.
Right, correct. That's correct. Okay, so let's go. So this is so there are nine takanos.
And
That
we're gonna
Rebbe-
go through all of them.
No, most of them you know already, right? 9 takanos. We've learned most of them. 9 takanos to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zot. If you want, we can go back and right. 9 takanos to
You're
Rabbi
like
Yochanan.
in the mnemonic device, remember online,
No. So let's look right. The Zo echad mitesha takano shehiskin Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Shis dahai pirka. 6 of them are in this perek, right? This perek revi'i that we're learning. 6 of them are here. So if you look at the so look at Rashi, literally right opposite there. Shis dahai pirka. So he says chada hai, right? This is one of them, right? This is one of them is with the Kohanim. The chamesh dimas nisin hiskin, right? And the other 5 we learned in Mishnayos, shihu tokin b'shiyeh, right? That they would do the tekiah, right? And then shiyeh lulav nital shiva, right? That they would take the lulav for all 7 days. That's we do that as a takana. V'sheyeh yom henef kulu aser, and the day of the 16th of Nisan, that you couldn't eat the chadash the entire day. V'sheyehu mikablin kol hayom, then you should and we accept edus the entire day. V'shelo yehu ha'edim holchim elo lemakom haba. So those 5 plus the one we just learned, right, makes 6. Okay. So shis tahai pirka, v'chada the pirka kama, and one is in the earlier chapter, an earlier perek, and that was Rashi says shelo yehu mechalin Shabbos ela al Nisan v'Tishrei bilvad. Right. Remember we learned that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai made a takana that the Edom can only be mechal Shabbos for Nisan and Tishrei. Right. Only for Nisan and Tishrei, not for the other months. Okay. V'idach. So that's. Now we're up to 7. V'idach and number 8. Before that, they could be Shabbos. Before that takana, they could be Mechal Shabbos for any month. Correct. V'idach and number.
Why was that made?
Because that takana was made because the only months that were significant for us, the only Rosh Chodesh is that we actually had to know about was Rosh Chodesh Nisan, because we needed to know when Pesach was, and Rosh Chodesh Tishrei because we needed to know when Yom Kippur and Sukkot. Shavuos, we know when it is just by counting from Pesach, so we don't need to know anything about Rosh Chodesh. Those are the only times that that was the takana of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. All right, v'idach and number 8, right? V'idach. The Tani we learn ger sheniskayer bizman hazeh tzarech sheyafrish ruba likino. That a ger who converts today meaning in the days of the Gemara, has to separate out a ruba, which is an amount of money, likino, for his karban. When a ger would convert in the days of the Beis Hamikdash, in addition to bris milah, in addition to Kabbalah's all mitzvahs, he would also have to give a karban. Now, the fact that we no longer have a Beis Hamikdash doesn't mean he's not obligated to give a karban. It simply means he can't give a karban. So what do we require him to do? So we require him to set aside money So that if the Beis Hamikdash is rebuilt,
He should be able to buy.
he
What do you
should
mean
be
set
able,
aside?
Set
So
aside,
put a
where-
bank
what are you
account
doing?
somewhere?
he's gonna put it, ich weiß nicht, under his mattress, I don't know, he's gonna put it.
He's not
uh,
donating.
He opens a separate account.
He opens a CD.
It's a building
He
fund.
said put
It's a building
aside.
fund.
Really, but it's a
When you
CD.
said put aside, that means put
Somehow.
aside, it's not donated.
No,
Right.
That's what I'm saying. It's not
no,
donated.
he's not donating it.
What happens
It's
when
a
he
Corbin
dies?
savings
Here's
account.
what.
To the money that he put aside.
Exactly.
What happens to it? Nothing, hopefully.
Does it belong to his children? I mean, does it stay set aside for eternity?
All right, hold on.
Because that's not happening. I mean,
Wait, so that was a principle, right? Gershon is Gayer Bismana Zetzarach Yafrish Ruba Lakino. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, Kvar Nimna Aleha Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai
right?
Ubitla. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along and
Said
did
no.
away with this.
Right.
Why did he do away with this? Mipnei ha-takala, because of takala. Takala means what? In other words, when the ger would set aside this money, what status would this money have? Not hefker, hekdesh. Right, this money would have the status of right. This money would have the status of hekdesh,
Right.
because it's designated to buy karbanos.
Mhm, mhm.
Now, what happens if you have hekdesh money lying around the house? Somebody's going to spend it by accident. So you have hekdesh money lying around the house. Somebody's going to spend it on chulin, and they're going to wind up profaning this hekdesh money. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai came along and said, you can convert, and you don't need to do this. That's number 8, right? That's takana number 8. The idach, and what was takana number 9? So in the spirit of everything we've been learning, pluksa, it's a machlokas, right? 8 of them we agree on. The 9th one, right? The 9th one we have a machlokas about, right? And who is the machlokas between? The Rav Papa, the Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, right? Rav Papa and Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak disagree as to what was the 9th takana. So let's see what they disagree about. Rav Papa Amar, Rav Papa says kerem revai, that the 9th decree was the decree of kerem revai. What kerem revai is, we'll talk about in a minute. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said lashon shel zahoris, that the 9th takana had to deal with the crimson thread from Yom Kippur, right? So they disagree about what this 9th takana was. Now we're gonna look at each of these things to try to figure out what they're. Well, let's do it outside first. We'll do it quickly. This way we can start in 2 weeks, right on it. All right. So what is kerem revai? What is kerem revai? So kerem revai means that the produce of the vineyard had to be brought into Yerushalayim, and they had to stock the stalls of Yerushalayim with all of this produce. In other words, this was the decree. The decree was you had to bring this kerem revai into Yerushalayim.
You mean part of your
Part of your harvest.
Part of it.
Right? Part of your harvest you had to bring into Yerushalayim. And right, and why did you have
of anything that you grew?
Any
no, kerem here is referring to a vineyard.
Then it brings some of the grapes or some of the wine.
I don't know if they brought grapes. I don't know if they brought grapes or wine.
But they say this is
So it's really, it's only any fruit that's attached to a vine, not a tree, right?
There is, we have 2 things. We have neta ravai and kerem ravai. Okay.
They define this as 40
Look at
years
note
roots
20.
in the vineyard.
Right, look at note 20. Okay. During the first 3 years of its growth, the produce of the grapevine and other trees. In other words, if you plant an apple tree in your backyard, so for the first 3 years, whatever that tree produces is called orla, and is prohibited for any use. Orla. The produce of the vine in its 4th year, ravai, is consecrated like maaser sheni. It may be eaten, but only in Jerusalem. One is not required to transport the produce itself to Jerusalem. Rather, it may be redeemed with money, and the money is taken to Jerusalem and used to purchase food that is eaten there. Under biblical law, one is permitted to redeem the produce with money anywhere outside Jerusalem, even within one step of the city walls. However, the rabbis decreed that anyone who had such produce within a day's travel of Jerusalem should not redeem it, but should transport the produce itself to Jerusalem and consume it. Right? So in other words, the decree was that people who lived within a day around Jerusalem, they were not allowed to redeem their revived produce. They had to bring their revived produce to Jerusalem. And we're going to see the reason why is to make Jerusalem beautiful, because people would come to Jerusalem. They should come to a Jerusalem whose fruit stalls and are overflowing,
Abundance of
Okay.
food.
All right, we'll stop here for tonight. Next week, no shear because of Yeshiva week. We will.